The assessment of religion within the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche is complex and ambivalent. While he is critical of theism in general, there are instances where he acknowledges the value of gods and overmen for humanity's future development. Understanding Nietzsche's contrasting views will become clearer when we explore his differentiation between monotheism and polytheism in establishing values. Nietzsche considers polytheism as a vital historical prerequisite for individualism, while the rigid adherence to absolute values in monotheism poses the greatest danger to human progress. Nietzsche's remarks on religion are not solely aimed at Christians. They equally apply to atheists, whom he sees as one consequence of Christian thought. Additionally, we will explore the connection Nietzsche draws between the scientific pursuit of truth and the monotheistic pursuit of the one true God. We are also going to explore Nietzsche's concept of the overmen and its relation to natural religion, and why Nietzsche considered it a superior alternative to objective truth in the creation of new values. Despite Nietzsche's critique of religion, he did not have an anti-religious stance. While many may perceive religion as unnatural, Nietzsche viewed religions as manifestations of our instincts and drives, which are inherent forces of nature. Within the pages of Nietzsche's work, The Gay Science, Nietzsche expresses a notably positive attitude towards polytheism while exploring the possibility of a natural polytheistic religion. We must start by defining Nietzsche's definition of polytheism, which he also refers to as natural religion. It is essential to clarify that Nietzsche's understanding of polytheism differs from the commonly held notion. In Nietzsche's perspective, polytheism does not entail a religion characterized by a pantheon of gods belonging to a single culture, akin to the Greek Olympians. Instead, we must grasp its meaning within a broader context. Polytheism, as Nietzsche portrays it, pertains to the gods revered by competing tribes, wherein each tribe recognizes the existence of the other's gods, while considering their own deities as wiser or more powerful. Throughout history, communities have faced the challenge of survival, and in their pursuit of collective well-being, they have created deities that embody the essential attributes of their survival. These gods serve as powerful symbols, representing the shared identity and aspirations of the community. They provide a sense of stability, guidance, and purpose for individuals and the entire culture. With their core values enshrined in a folk god, this figure strengthens and justifies the community's belief system, fostering unity and cooperation. These gods become the foundation for a distinct type of human existence, setting the tribe apart from others. As the embodiment of the community's fundamental needs, the deity legitimizes the enforcement of its values. Within this framework, gods are regarded as manifestations of naturalistic morals, serving as both embodiments and justifications for the pragmatic ideals associated with a community's survival and well-being. By natural, we mean that the values and principles pursued by a people are influenced by the circumstances that shape their survival and progress. So despite Nietzsche's critique of religion, he recognizes it as an indispensable tool for the survival of primitive societies. Nietzsche scholar Nicholas Corral argues that, according to Nietzsche, the primary benefit of polytheism lies in its capacity to enable pre-individualist societies to forge new gods, and provides justification for abandoning their existing values in pursuit of individualistic ideals. This act of mythological creation allows for the reassessment of established moral frameworks. Nietzsche asserts that the invention of gods, overmen, and divine ancestors constituted the initial and most significant prerequisite for the emergence of individualism. There was only one norm, man, and every people thought that it possessed this one ultimate norm. But above and outside, in some distant overworld, one was permitted to behold a plurality of norms. One God was not considered a denial of another God, nor blasphemy against him. It was here that the luxury of individuals was first permitted. It was here that one first honored the rights of individuals. In Nietzsche's usage, the term norm encompasses both individual and pluralistic connotations. While there exists a single norm of man, it manifests in multiple interpretations represented by the gods worshipped by surrounding tribes. Each god, being a representation of a distinct value system, presents alternative ideals that can be emulated, with each ideal having its opposing counterpart. In a polytheistic context, a folk god is considered the most suitable protector and preserver of a people. However, if circumstances demonstrate otherwise, the people are willing to let go of that particular deity. With multiple gods to choose from, whenever a god proves inadequate in providing protection and guidance, whether due to defeat in war or other circumstances, they are abandoned. The merit of an ideal is determined by its success or failure, judged through the pragmatic concerns of a tribe's survival and advancement. When a tribe suffered defeat and was subsequently enslaved by a rival group, the god associated with the defeated tribe would be regarded as valueless and discarded. The patron god of a city or tribe was believed to be perpetually supportive of their own people, providing guidance and assistance. However, it was not a matter of questioning the deity's benevolence, but rather their capability to offer effective guidance and support. During times of war, the god of the victorious people held greater worthiness for reverence, often leading to the conquered tribe adopting the religions and beliefs of their conquerors. When viewed from this perspective, the Judeo-Christian God can be seen not as a progression of the concept of God, but rather as its deterioration. It no longer promotes the progress of a people. Instead, it signifies decadence and regression. Nietzsche's exploration of the benefits of polytheism serves as a foundation for his critique of monotheism. Within a polytheistic framework, when a god proves inadequate, he is relinquished in favor of a more powerful deity. The worth and potency of a god were demonstrated through the successes and failures of its worshippers. In contrast, monotheism operates differently. The circumstances faced by a people can never be taken as evidence against their god. Instead, conquerors or natural disasters are viewed as instruments of this god's punishment for a people's sins. This transformation is exemplified in the case of the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh. Nietzsche describes the shift from Yahweh, the patron god, to the notion of the one true God as the most fundamental contradiction to natural religion and morality. When the Israelites encountered internal conflicts and suffered numerous defeats, they needed a new explanation. Despite the flourishing of their oppressors, the Israelites held on to Yahweh, believing he had the power to vanquish the Assyrians or any other of their oppressors. Instead of letting go of their God and embracing the deity of their conquerors, they retained Yahweh but altered their relationship with him. This denaturalizing of Yahweh was the price paid for keeping him. In The Antichrist, specifically in section 25, Nietzsche describes the process of denaturalizing God. Starting with the Israelites and accelerated by the Jews, this process ultimately led to the emergence of an anti-natural morality associated with Christianity. All hopes remained unfulfilled. The old God was no longer able to do what he once could do. They should have let him go. What happened? They changed his concept. They denatured his concept. At this price they held on to him. Yahweh, the God of justice, no longer one with Israel, an expression of the self-confidence of the people, now a God only under certain conditions. The concept of God becomes a tool in the hands of priestly agitators who now interpret all happiness as a reward, all unhappiness as punishment for disobeying God, as sin. That most mendacious device of interpretation, the alleged moral world order, with which the natural concepts of cause and effect are turned upside down once and for all. When, through reward and punishment, one has done away with natural causality, an anti-natural causality is required. Now everything else that is unnatural follows. Morality, no longer the expression of the conditions for the life and growth of a people, no longer its most basic instinct of life, but become abstract, become the antithesis of life. Morality as a systematic degradation of the imagination, as the evil eye for all things. The concepts of resurrection, redemption, punishment, and the kingdom of God served as means to justify the plight of the oppressed. It was believed that their God would restore justice if they remained faithful and obedient to his commandments. Nietzsche explains that monotheism originated not from weakness, but from a formidable strength of will. The Jews were a people who chose to endure at any cost. In pursuit of this objective, they reinterpreted all of history and reassessed all values, upending the established order of cause and effect in the world. The dissociation of Yahweh from worldly matters and the needs of the people, the reverence for a God who imposes demands and punishes for its own sake, accompanied by the belief in an objective moral order, directly contradicts everything that defines life and the concept of development. Life has come to an end where the kingdom of God begins. The Jews' steadfast commitment to their identity led them to reject and suppress the realities of the world, instead deriving all value from a metaphysical entity. This desire to prioritize something beyond experiential reality as superior to life poses the most significant peril to the ongoing development of humanity, which was Nietzsche's primary concern. The belief in monotheistic systems of value fosters an inflexible adherence to a single interpretation of humanity. This singular ideal presents the most formidable threat to humanity thus far, because it increases the potential for premature stagnation. Monotheism, this rigid consequence of the doctrine of one normal human type, the faith in one normal God beside whom there are only pseudo-gods, was perhaps the greatest danger that has yet confronted humanity. It threatened us with the premature stagnation that, as far as we can see, most other species have long reached. In contrast to polytheism, where a single norm exists, while allowing for multiple interpretations of the ideal human being, monotheism aims to exclude all competing interpretations and ideals. Monotheistic belief systems advocate for a singular notion of a normal human being and actively enforce this ideal, suppressing any rivals or alternatives. This enforcement prevents different interpretations from being tested and proven through natural competition. The value of this singular and absolute norm in monotheism does not require validation based on the pragmatic considerations of life, such as vitality or the progress of a community. Rival ideas are categorically rejected and denied. Since the worth of this ideal is assumed solely based on its exclusive claim to absolute truth, rather than its practical benefits for life, monotheistic values can be enforced regardless of the cost, without any evidence of positive outcomes. When monotheistic ideals fail and result in suffering or defeat, they are not perceived as failures, but rather as punishment or a test of faith. It is not considered the failures of God that lead to suffering or failure, but rather the responsibility falls on the worshippers for not meeting the prerequisites to receive God's blessings. This is even interpreted as an expression of love from God towards his worshippers. As Nietzsche ironically remarks in the Genealogy, their misery is a sign of being chosen by God. One beats the dogs one likes best. Perhaps this misery is also a preparation, a testing, a schooling. Perhaps it is even more, something that one day will be made good and recompensed with interest, with huge payments of gold, no of happiness. This they call bliss. A deity like the Judeo-Christian God serves as a powerful tool for establishing a normalized ideal of humanity. In a polytheistic context, a god can be abandoned when it fails to bring prosperity to a people. However, monotheistic faith does not allow for blaming the god, leading to the reinterpretation of reality and the creation of new narratives to explain these failures. A standardized definition of humanity is accepted, and adherents of monotheistic beliefs submit to this standard as if it were a piece of fate. This poses a significant danger to the ongoing development of humanity, which Nietzsche refers to as the still undetermined animal that has progressed by surmounting challenges, opposition, and by competition. Nietzsche endeavored to present an alternative ideal to the Judeo-Christian ideal, which we will explore in the next section of this video. In his work, The Genealogy of Morality, Nietzsche poses a rhetorical question about whether he is constructing or deconstructing an ideal. He clarifies that his task is not to create a new ideal, but rather to leave that task to someone younger and stronger than himself, someone like Zarathustra, the godless. Zarathustra carries on Nietzsche's exploration of the advantages of polytheism and the drawbacks of monotheism. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche presents an alternative ideal in the form of the Übermensch. In the prelude of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche presents two contrasting paths for humanity's future. One path involves the idea of self-overcoming and the creation of the overman. This path embraces pragmatic life concerns and encourages competition among various interpretations. The other path leads to the end of development and the emergence of a completely normalized and standardized human being, referred to as the last man. The overman represents an alternative ideal based on the pursuit of individual excellence and the exploration of diverse perspectives. In contrast, the last man arises from the pursuit of objective truth and the establishment of universal values. The last man, rather than being a domesticated Christian, signifies the ultimate result of incorporating the scientific quest for truth into the process of value creation. These possibilities exist within a secular and atheistic culture. The last men find unity in their shared perception of reality, well-being, sanity, and happiness. They embrace a rational standard that governs their lives. In this society, instead of fostering competition and striving to overcome challenges, any individuals who diverge from this norm are marginalized. The last men adhere to a collective mindset and behavioral patterns, forging a shared identity. They claim to have invented happiness, which becomes a prescribed norm imposed on all and justified as scientific. Nonconformists perceive themselves as afflicted and willingly seek therapy to align with the established standards. No shepherd and one herd. Everybody wants the same. Everybody is the same, and whoever feels differently goes voluntarily into the insane asylum. In the aftermath of the death of God, humanity is in need of a higher history, or engaging in diversions to distract us from the awareness of the idealistic void. In Nietzsche's proclamation of the death of God, he provocatively questioned, "Who gave us the right to wipe away the horizon?" The absence of a horizon, a lofty goal to strive for, poses a great danger. The concept of the overman was intended to serve as a new horizon, a singular aspiration that, similar to the multiple interpretations within a polytheistic framework, offers diverse possibilities. 1,000 goals have there been so far, for there have been 1,000 peoples. Only the yoke for the 1,000 necks is still lacking. The one goal is lacking. Humanity still has no goal. But tell me, my brothers, if humanity still lacks a goal, is humanity itself not still lacking too? Zarathustra presents a singular objective, the self-overcoming of humanity towards the overman. Nietzsche's concept of the overman stands in stark contrast to the last man, embodying a non-metaphysical and pluralistic ideal rooted in the early foundations of natural religion. Similar to the polytheistic framework with its singular norm, yet accommodating diverse paths towards the ultimate human being, the Übermensch represents a unified goal while fostering a multiplicity of avenues for self-overcoming towards the overman. This is a philosophy of the future that promotes a perpetual state of competition and growth. You should love peace as a means to new wars, and the short peace more than the long. To you I do not recommend work but struggle. To you I do not recommend peace but victory. Let your work be a struggle. Let your peace be a victory. The primary advantage of polytheism resided in its capacity to transcend the confines of established values. In Nietzsche's ideal, this role of the folk god, which justified change, is replaced by the concept of the overman. Nietzsche embraced the polytheistic framework in a secular context, aiming to restore the innocence inherent in the creation of new values. Some critics have remarked on the vagueness of Nietzsche's overman, but this intentional ambiguity is crucial to its essence as a singular goal with multiple paths. In Zarathustra, the Übermensch is referred to as a ghost, symbolizing its yet-to-be-realized embodiment in diverse forms. This ghost that runs after you, my brother, is more beautiful than you. Why do you not give him your flesh and bones? According to Nietzsche scholar Nicholas Korel, the overman serves as the ideal embodiment of the essential qualities necessary to surpass the limitations of contemporary humanity. In this regard, the overman represents a secular alternative and successor to the framework of polytheistic folk gods. Nietzsche does not advocate for relativism, but rather embraces a multitude of competing norms for self-transcendence. Consequently, discussing a singular definitive personification of the overman becomes meaningless. Likewise, this does not imply that all interpretations hold equal value. Nietzsche envisions these competing approaches to self-overcoming within a pragmatic and competitive context, where the most successful methods will prevail by offering the greatest advantages to those who embody them, akin to a tribe with its folk god. Nevertheless, even if one method emerges triumphant, it does not signify the attainment of a definitive process of self-overcoming. Instead, new interpretations will arise, initiating the cycle anew. This framework encourages various groups to develop their own distinct ideals, as Nietzsche says of polytheism. In polytheism, the free-spiriting and many-spiriting of man attained its first preliminary form, the strength to create for ourselves our own new eyes, and ever again new eyes that are even more our own. Hence, man alone among all the animals has no eternal horizons and perspectives. Nietzsche's intention was not to present individualistic values, but rather to forge a new horizon for humanity to strive towards. This is a philosophy of the future, a higher history that resides over present-day humanity in its pursuit of self-transcendence, providing a broader historical perspective in which to situate ourselves in, that encompasses various competitive norms centered around the overman ideal. While some may see the overman as a replacement for God, it is not a deity that Nietzsche is constructing, but rather tables of values established by passionate and creative individuals for their people. It is important to note that Nietzsche's aim was not to create values solely for individuals. Rather, he sought to establish a new horizon for humanity as a whole. This does not imply that individuals should not strive to cultivate their character and seek conditions that enhance their way of life. Nietzsche did encourage such endeavors. However, it is crucial to understand that becoming an Übermensch is not just an individual accomplishment, but rather a historical goal for the future that requires the passage of numerous generations. It is intended to be achieved within a cultural context. An individual achieves greatness by appropriating and building off of the accomplishments of past generations. In his work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche introduces the concept of the last man, representing a dystopian vision of society. It is important to note that the emergence of the last man is not a direct consequence of the pursuit of the one true God, but rather to a broader process that started with monotheism and then completed by scientific and rational thinking. In Zarathustra's narrative, the ideal of the overman is presented in the context of a modern society deeply influenced by scientific and post-Enlightenment ideas. In this society, the death of God is widely acknowledged, and most people identify as atheists who believe they have moved beyond metaphysical and religious beliefs. However, Nietzsche argues that the true dystopia lies in the homogenization and standardization of humanity through a scientific and rational discourse. The last humans described by Nietzsche are not necessarily monotheists, but individuals who have embraced atheism as a means to transcend traditional religious frameworks. Yet the danger lies in the loss of individuality and the suppression of unique human potential as society becomes driven by scientific objectivity and a desire for uniformity. Nietzsche thought the exclusive fixation on truth as the ultimate arbiter of values can be just as perilous as the belief in a single true God, sacred scriptures, or dominant scientific paradigms. All of these frameworks have the potential to marginalize alternative perspectives and limit the diverse ways in which a social identity can be understood. When a particular paradigm is elevated to absolute status, it becomes a potent instrument for legitimizing power and enforcing its authority. In our present times, we can observe how science is often wielded to advance political agendas. The slogan, "Trust the science," is frequently employed to consolidate authority and silence dissenting voices. In Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, he proclaimed the need for a critique of the will to truth and the prevailing belief that truth holds greater value than untruth. Understanding Nietzsche's critique of the will to truth is essential before exploring how science has become a powerful tool for shaping singular norms and social identities. In Section 1 of Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche shows some skepticism towards the value of truth. What in us really wants truth? Indeed, we came to a long halt at the question about the cause of this will, until we finally came to a complete stop before a still more basic question. We asked about the value of this will. Suppose we want truth. Why not rather untruth, uncertainty, even ignorance? In The Gay Science, Nietzsche observed that the will to truth serves as a moral imperative that is somehow connected to Plato. Over time, this imperative became institutionalized through the monotheistic quest for the one true God. Nietzsche went so far as to refer to Plato as the pre-existent Christian in Twilight of the Idols, drawing a connection between Plato's teachings and the origins of Judeo-Christian monotheism, particularly in Egypt where the faith had its historical beginnings. Through these references, Nietzsche highlighted the significant influence of Plato and his association with early Christian thought. My mistrust of Plato goes deep. He represents such an aberration from all the basic instincts of the Hellene, is so moralistic, so pre-existent Christian. He already takes the concept good for the highest concept, that for the whole phenomenon Plato, I would sooner use the harsh phrase higher swindle, or, if it sounds better, idealism, than any other. Plato is a coward before reality, consequently he flees into the ideal. When the concepts of the good and the true became intertwined, the pursuit of the good became synonymous with the pursuit of truth. Throughout history, Christian European values have been regarded as objectively good, emanating from a perceived true and divine world order. This perspective still influences us today, where there is a strong emphasis on scientific and rational thinking. The desire within us for this metaphysical good does not simply vanish because we now identify ourselves as rational and scientific beings. The preference for truth over untruth is a refinement of the preference for the good over the evil. As Nietzsche wrote in his work Dawn, fulfilling itself in us, in case you want a formula, the self-sublimation of morality. Nietzsche criticized the notion that science represents the complete overcoming of metaphysics. He argued that, even within science, value judgments are still rooted in metaphysical assumptions, contradicting the widespread belief that science transcends metaphysics. The belief that truth is inherently good or holds the highest value lacks factual grounding, according to Nietzsche. He argued that there is no non-metaphysical argument to establish the superiority of truth over ignorance or illusion. While Nietzsche recognized the importance of truth within social contexts and the construction of societies, he also pointed out that there are numerous instances where truth holds little practical value. In fact, he suggested that deceit, superstition, and subjective opinions have exerted equally positive influences on the development of humanity. Nietzsche's critique does not discredit truth itself, but rather challenges the unwavering pursuit of truth and the assertion of its general superiority over ignorance. He contended that a strong commitment to truth already presupposes a pre-existing conviction regarding the assumed superiority of truth over falsehood. We see that science also rests on a faith. There simply is no science without presuppositions. The question whether truth is needed must not only have been affirmed in advance, but affirmed to such a degree that the principle, the faith, the conviction finds expression. Nothing is needed more than truth, and in relation to it everything else has only second-rate value. Some people like Sam Harris think we should base our values on facts. This preference for truth over ignorance is not rooted in factual evidence, but rather stems from a moral impulse that perceives truth as an ultimate good. This valuation of truth is ingrained within the scientific discourse as an underlying assumption. Nietzsche identifies this will to truth as a product of a metaphysical hierarchy, which originated from the moral imperative enforced for 2 millennia by the monotheistic pursuit of the one true God. In this pursuit, the belief in God as inherently good and truthful played a significant role. Nietzsche's critique of Judeo-Christianity is closely tied to his critique of modernity, as he argues that the supposed self-sufficiency of science in overcoming metaphysical hierarchies is illusory. Rather, these hierarchies continue to be presupposed within the scientific framework and its valuation of truth. The preference for truth over metaphysics itself represents a metaphysical stance, because it assumes the existence of a true world that holds greater value than mere fictions. This bears a resemblance to the devaluation of the physical world as mere appearance or illusion, and the construction of a true world found in Judeo-Christianity and Plato's philosophy. The assessment that truth is more valuable than metaphysics is based on a metaphysical and unconditional presupposition. This means that the value of what has been assumed to be the basis of overcoming metaphysics derives from a presupposed metaphysical hierarchy. How does this relate to the creation of new values? The persistence of the will to truth within science offers a foundation for establishing values rooted in objective truth. This may result in the homogenization of humanity, where values are no longer shaped by natural and pragmatic conditions, but are imposed as an objective imperative that applies to all. When only one value structure is deemed acceptable based on objective truth, alternative interpretations are disregarded. This homogenization of values would create a norm that applies to everyone, potentially giving rise to what Nietzsche refers to as the last man, a symbol of mediocrity and conformity. Nietzsche was also concerned that the singular drive for ultimate truth might undermine our sense of meaning and purpose. One of Nietzsche's claims is that science has not offered us a perspective that frees us from the need for religions, but instead has reproduced the need for what he calls metaphysical comforts. By stripping human life of its once assumed value, science diminishes its dignity. It constantly reminds humanity of its unprivileged status within the vastness of the universe, whether through the concept of an infinite cosmos, the immense expanse of time, or our evolutionary origins from apes. This perspective fosters a sense of being unworthy, or at best inconsequential. Our highest ideals, derived from our primal instincts, lack objective legitimacy. Nietzsche is not disputing these observations, just highlighting the dangers they pose. The continuous devaluation of humanity's place in the universe makes religions like Christianity appear as attractive alternatives. This does not undermine science itself, but is an observation that the ascetic devaluation of life found in Judeo-Christianity is perpetuated and even accelerated within the realm of science. Rigidly basing our value system on objective truth poses another great danger. It has the potential to legitimize authoritarian political structures. Nietzsche warns against the totalitarian nature of deriving values solely from objective truth, which leads to the exclusion of competing ideas and alternative ways of living. This, in turn, grants power and authority to those who enforce and uphold these standards without considering the potential consequences or the impact on individuals. Nietzsche does not deny the existence of objectivity, but he emphasizes the importance of recognizing the limitations and potential dangers of relying solely on objective and unchanging standards. He argues that untruth was just as important to the development of humanity as truth. Placing excessive emphasis on objective truth may ultimately undermine our well-being and collective progress. A society that prioritizes truth as the ultimate measure of value has the potential to effectively exclude rival ideas and hinder the re-evaluation of concepts based on personal life experiences. Recognizing the dangers posed by the imposition of a universal standard for normalcy, Nietzsche introduced the concept of the overmen, which he derived from his study of natural religion. Similar to the pluralistic nature of polytheism, the Übermensch is conceived as tables of values rather than a singular standard. This allows different individuals and communities to find their own unique paths towards self-overcoming and personal growth. The absence of fixed horizons or perspectives emphasizes its continuous process of transformation and self-mastery.